which deals with Perek Aleph, and in the section which is actually devoted to Midrashim on the Pasuk B'chosiv Kebalayla. You won't have any trouble finding it, because for you it's called the top of the paper. You're a listener. Okay, sounds good. Acher B'chosiv Ke, Midrash interprets it B'cho umivako acherim imo, that the tears of Jerusalem triggered the tears of others along with her. And what the Midrash is about to say, there's a very interesting comment from the Eitz Yosef, who notes that there's a little bit of gematria here, that the Bocho with the Vav gives us the number 6, and the number 6 tells us that there are 6, so to speak, partners, 6 secondary weepers in the Churban of Yerushalayim. Right? In other words, the Pasuk itself is speaking about Yerushalayim. So the question is, who are the other shareholders who are brought to tears in this destruction? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu Imo. The first is the Almighty Himself, that the Rebbe Shalom weeps and grieves with the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash. Vayikra Hashem Elokim Tzvakos Vayom Hahu Livchi Ulemispei. That the Rebbe Shalom Himself calls on that day for weeping and for eulogy. Ochom Vakor Malachei Hasharei Simon. The second group is the ministering angels, the angelic hosts themselves, as well are brought to tears. Dichsiv hein erelom tzoaku chutza. Right now, here there is a very interesting pair of midrashim. One is Omar Rav Zeira Chitza Ksiv. The word chutza is written choser. In other words, it's not ches vav tzadi hey, but it's written with a kubutz, so there's no vav. So if you look at just the letters, you could read it chitza. Now the word chitza means it's almost like the idea of crying foul. In other words, something which is an outrage. They call outrage. Now, there are the midrash that we have here quoted in the standard Vilna edition, which is on your sheet, if I'm not mistaken. It says, "Chitza hi gavei denichsinei." It is we consider it to be an outrage to shecht him, to slaughter him. This is a midrash which is actually a misborrowing from the Midrash Rabbah of Rabbi Zira. It's the Eitz Yosef who clears this up, because that is indeed what the Malachim said, not at the Churban, but what they said at the time of Akedas Yitzchak. That the idea of a father being asked to slaughter his son, the angels, and we know the angels wept over the altar of Yitzchak Avinu. The angels said, "Chitza, this is outrageous." There is, however, another girsa which makes more sense. Amanav zeira chitza ksiv chitza uman govar lemachrivei beisi. So it says that someone should come to destroy my house. It's the Rebbe Shalom who is the Malachim are saying, who is this who dares to come and to destroy the house of the Rebbe Shalom? That makes much more sense in this context, that because this is about the shareholders in the tears of the Churban. Barachia interprets the pasuk differently from Rabbi Zeira, and it's come down to Omar vayotze oso hachutza. Here he quotes the pasuk relating to Abraham Avinu when he takes him outside and he shows them the stars. Bocho v'akesh shamayim v'oretz imo, that the hosts of earth and heaven wept along with with Yerushalayim. This is a theme which has cropped up in several places. The beautiful keynote that we read in a cursory fashion last night, but without interpretation, is the keynote which is attributed to say incorrectly to the Ibn Ezra, but where it goes through all of the signs of the zodiac and ascribes to them grieving over the Churban Beis Hamikdash. So this theme, of which this midrash is a part, the theme is that we should not make the mistake of thinking that the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash was another event in history or politics. And I'm sure you could find, if you did a survey of various instances where people's national shrines or temples were destroyed as part of an act of conquest, you could probably find many of them. I dare say Herodotus would be a fine source, and I don't have particular examples, but I would say that it's probably standard fare. The Romans, for example, didn't make this up, especially for us. So the notion that this is a cosmic event, that the heavens and the earth are shaken by the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, this is the rabbinic point of view. Beautiful verse in Sefer Yoel, Prophet Yoel, shortly before the passage that we read on Shabbos Shuvah. The sun and the moon are darkened. That makes it particularly poignant that we go from Tisha B'Av to Kiddush Levana, because Kiddush Levana is a sign of the impending Nechama, and it is the reversal of this process of Shemesh v'Yareach Kodaru, that the sun and the moon have gone dark, rather that the moon is coming back into its full light. Boche umavako harim ugavaos imo, the topography of the world. Now realize that when you're talking about the heavenly bodies, okay, so you're talking at a kind of cosmic level. But when you talk about harim ugavaos, when you talk about the mountains and the hills, that is an impact closer to home. Remember that the Navi predicted that the times of Mashiach would be accompanied by an earthquake in the area of Har HaZeisim. Remember also that when the psalmist wants to picture Kriyas Yamsuf, which is in a sense, Kriyas Yamsuf has been many times juxtaposed as the positive twin of the Churban of the Beis Hamikdash. When what do we have there? We have we have this expression of joyful movement. You really want to know what that is about. I have a video of Salam Yarn of my grandson Isaac when his father arrived home from his first trip, and Isaac doesn't really speak yet, but when Ben walked into the room and announced Daddy's home, this little boy just started, he was jumping up and he didn't know what to do with himself. He was so filled with elation that he became a moving object. I think that when Chazal imagined the Harim and the Gevos reacting to Kriyas Yamsuf, They were talking exactly about that kind of an electrical pulse of joy, one which could only be expressed in movement, in dance. Here we have the same Harimu Gavaos, their emotional depth having been once plumbed by the joy of Kriyas Yamsuf. We see them reacting, B'chos Sivkeh, weeping in company of Yerushalayim. And you remember, the hills and the mountains are to Jerusalem like family, right? Harim Savivla, the mountains around Jerusalem. So you can imagine the mountains who are like the protective aunts and uncles of this holy space, having to behold this terrible catastrophe of the Churban, and weeping with Yerushalayim, that even when they could no longer offer their protection, as they do in the ideal vision of the psalmist, when they can no longer offer their protection, all they have to give is their tears, and they weep in the company of the Churban. The truth of the matter is, each of these images individually, I mean the 6 of them come chock-a-block, one right after the other, but each of these images is like the tip of extraordinary iceberg, that there is so much more literary background and imagery to touch the imagination. So Achud Yachsiv, Navi Yirmiyah refers Ra'isi Esahari, Bocho Mebako, Shivim Umos Imo. This is one of the ones which is perhaps most extraordinary. We are used to thinking of the nations of the world as an endless reservoir of anti-Semitism. But at their highest level, if the nations of the world were truly to contemplate a globe without the presence of the Jewish people, they would realize what a catastrophic loss it would be to them. And so on the level of the Shivim Umos, this usually refers to the geniuses, in other words, the essence of which represents each of the 70 nations in the cosmos. They recognize that the loss of the Beis HaMikdash was a catastrophe not only for Klal Yisrael, it was not a parochial catastrophe, it was a catastrophe for them as well. And here the Midrash offers as the footnote on Rabbi Pinchas, Osam Shivim Porim Shal Yisrael Makrivim Bechad Keneged Shivim Umos Heim Kidei Shalo Yitzodeh Ha'olam Mehem. The 70 offerings on Sukkot was on behalf of the 70 nations, so that the world might not be rendered desolate from hunger for them. In other words, there seemed to be an intimate connection between the worship that went on in the Beis HaMikdash, particularly on Sukkot, that the worship of the Beis HaMikdash was somehow the foundation of the economy of all of mankind, and that absent that, the whole world was in a new kind of peril. So, of course, if one were to draw the extrapolation with Israel taking the most remarkable share in the development of new ideas to help the world. If the world is doing everything it can through global warming to throw itself into the chasm of global starvation and food shortage, which just came out last week, the prediction that global warming is going to cause catastrophic food shortages around the world. If the world is going to be rescued by the agency of human ingenuity from this terrible fate, which is going to cost millions and tens of millions, possibly hundreds of millions of lives, there is still a good chance that just as in the mind of the Midrash, that salvation is going to come out of Eretz Yisrael, out of the Jewish enterprise, the chances are that is where it will come in our time as well.
But where does the Midrash see that it's reciprocal? In other words, the article brought on Sukkot fine. We see Israel making a contribution. But where do we see that the 70 nations of the world in any form?
Well, that is exactly here. That's why they connect B'chos Sivkeh, that the second weeper is the 70 nations. It's true they're a little slow on the trigger, Shiur, and that's why I every time the Congress votes on prayers in public schools, I say no midrash in public schools, and that's what we need to get us through. The reciprocity is sometimes difficult to find.
But to answer Shiur, isn't this really more of like an aspirational hope for the end of times, like an Eleni, like what it's going to be when everything is
Possibly.
It's supposed to
Okay.
be.
It says
It's not there yet.
But it says it's occurred.
It occurs at some cosmic level.
Maybe also, like you ever hear these like philosophers that say the Jews defy history or Mark Twain or some of these people, or whatever. So maybe like they are representative of it, just to kind of keep the conversation going that there's something up with
In
these
other words,
Jewish
that somewhere there's always someone on the other side who is proclaiming the special contribution of the Jews.
sort of, yeah. Before everyone
I don't know that we would have survived if we didn't have at least a few friends on the other side. In any case, B'chol u'mebakol, the last is Knesset Yisrael Imo. And it's funny that this should come at the end, that the partner in mourning of Yerushalayim is the house of Israel. V'hodahu dichsiv v'tisa kol ha'edo. And this is a fascinating midrash. Our tears are not theoretical, Rabbi. Rabbi Chunya masni le b'shem Rabbi Nechemya. Rabbi Chunya taught in the name of Rabbi Nechemya. He read it differently. Instead of Vatisa, Vatashe ksiv. Chove bisha, who's bison ledario. You have laid a cruel debt on coming generations. Why? Because we know that the concept of Bechia Ledoros, which will be introduced again, that the weeping, that will be a weeping for all generations, is one that was incurred at the beginning of this midrashic passage, which we've looked at already, with the Meraglim and with their first weeping. So if Klal Yisrael is weeping over Yerushalayim, it is because Yerushalayim is the proof that the debt has not yet been paid, and that in the Churban we are still under the edict, as it were, the obligation of Bechia Ledoros, and so we have good reason to cry. Now the Midrash shifts its gears. We got as far in the pasuk as Bocho Tivket. The next word, of course, is Balayla. The question is, what is the special role of nighttime in the grieving over the Churban? And Loma Balayla, says the Midrash, the Fisha ain't kol holech ela Balayla, because that is when the voice carries. When weeping has the greatest impact. Nemar Balayla, Amar Rabbi, Aivu Laila Moshech Imokino. The evening, the night draws out Kino. Well, especially if you're thinking in a time where there is no artificial light to speak of, except for very rich people. When a person would awaken in the middle of the night, the sense of anxiety, the sense of panic is greatly heightened. So when he says Moshech Imokina, means it is the setting, so to speak, for drawing out the most elaborate forms of lamentation. And indeed, anyone who has ever known, or aleichem, the experience of PTSD, there is nothing more god awful than suddenly being awake in the middle of the night and overcome by terror and panic, and the world is asleep and you're practically choking on it. The notion that Laila Mosheich Imokin, it is an accelerant, if you will, for the process of lamentation is quite well founded. And then we have the most extraordinary midrashic narrative. Maisa be'isha achas, shehoisa b'shechunoso shel Rabbi Gamliel. There was a certain woman who lived in the neighborhood of Rabbi Gamliel. V'hoya lo ben Tishchores. Now ben Tishchores is interesting. Most of the Mefarshim say that this means a son who was still in the blush of youth. In other words, the son himself was young. However, the Radal tells us that Ben Tishchores means that he was a son of her old age. He was a Ben Zekunim, like Yitzchak to Sarah, that he was born when she was old. Gomes, and he died. And every night this woman would weep and wail over her lost son. Rabban Gamliel shomea es kolo. Rabban Gamliel would hear her weeping. Nizkar churban beis hamikdash, and this would trigger for him the memory of the churban. V'hoya boche imo, and he would join her in weeping. Ad shenoshru risei einov. How did anyone ever know about this? He didn't wake anyone. His Talmidim noticed that he was weeping so much that he had lost his eyelashes, that his eyes were affected. What?
Is that possible?
Is that possible? I don't have that expert. And fascinating, the language. When his Talmidim became sensitive, when they realized what had happened, what was happening to their master, Omdu ufinu osam mishchunosam, they moved her out of his neighborhood. Well, this story is so interesting on so many levels. First of all, the idea that the Churban was so much a part of the personal psychological reality of Rabbi Gamliel, that the thought of anyone losing a child was a trigger which reminded him doubtless of the Churban itself, but also of the Churban as it was reflected in so many tragic stories of the deaths of children, etc. And so it was something that was so close to his surface that it was easily triggered. There are other sources, other places where this midrash is mentioned that tell us that this went on for 7 years, and that his Talmidim were never aware of it. So what we see here is that there is already between Rabban Gamliel and his Talmidim, there is apparently this gulf, that the Churban just did not exist for them at the same level of intensity, at the same personal level. Churban was something they opened up every Tisha B'Av, okay. And as the beautiful quotation in Shtisel says, that the mother would look in her tzena arena when it came time to mention, would say, and now one cries. And she would cry. Right? So we know Tisha B'Av, and now one cries, now one grieves, now one acts like an avil. But for Rabbi Gamliel, this was not the stuff sequestered in one period, in one day. Rather, for Rabbi Gamliel, this was an ongoing thing, and his Talmidim realized that if they did not remove the trigger, their Rebbe was in great danger. And as a matter of fact, along with this, the Radal brings evidence that Chazal believed that particularly after the age of 40, constant weeping leads to blindness, leads to the degeneration of the eye. I don't know whether you see it. Not so much on this one, says the ophthalmologist. But that it leads to, that it has lasting deleterious effects. So say Chazal. And so the Talmidim, aside from the fact that I guess he wasn't sleeping that well, the Talmidim had reason to believe that their Rebbe would go blind. And so they had to remove the trigger.
This was the Rabbi Gamliel who was functioning very shortly after the Korban and reacting to it, I assume. They said...
interesting, but there are a number of Rabbi Gamliels. I can't tell from this midrash. I was wondering the same thing, Mark. Which Rabbi Gamliel we're talking
It's
about?
not the Pesach Matzah nor
No, the PMM. No, I can't say that for sure. Anyway, the midrash continues and takes us to another phrase. V'dim oso al lecheyo. She weeps, and the tears are on her cheek. So, what does that mean? Says the midrash, and you're going to see how they make this connection. Al kohanel. Dim oso al lecheyo. That the weeping in this case is for the death of so many kohanim. Kimadat Omar v'nosan lakohen hazroa v'halechoyayim v'akeva. That one of the priestly gifts was the lechoyayim, the cheek meat of the sacrifice, and as such, al lecheya. The midrash understands that it means weeping for those who used to get L'chayayim. Davar acher al giboreho. That they are weeping for the heroes. Kemadat Omar, as we refer to Shimshon vayimtso l'chi chamor tiriyah. He found the jawbone of an ass and he used it as a weapon against the Philistines. Again, here the midrash always plays on words and echoes. So the lechi here is taken from the chamor. I wonder if the organization lechi had this in mind, the calling
that was a complicated.
Yeah, but it was also an acronym.
Yeah, the acronym everybody knows.
Right, but using lechi may have been a reference here to Samson, who fought the Philistines against great
If
odds.
it did, it was a posteriori.
Right.
They came. It was Locme, and then
Yeah, but you can do a lot with acronyms. You can put any set together. Anyway, I'm voting for this possibility. Davar acher al shofteho, that it is also a pasuk which recalls the judges that Amrat b'shevet yaku al halechi. They would strike with a stick on the cheek. Davar acher al bachureho, at motzi b'shah shenichnusu sonim lebeis hamikdash tofsu es habachurim v'kofsu yedeim lachoreihem. That when this time is not based on any of these plays on words. This time it is based on an actual narrative tradition, which is what they took the powerful young men, the kofsu yedehem la'achoreihem, and they tied their hands behind their backs, v'hoyu bochim, and these young men were weeping, v'hoyu hadumos yordos alechgehem, and the tears ran onto their cheeks, v'lohayu yecholim likanchon, and there was no one to dry the tears. And a beautiful expression, v'noshros alechgehem kitsareves hashchim, and it carved scars onto their cheeks like the scars that come from boils, from skin diseases. In other words, the tears on the cheeks of Jerusalem were tears that paralleled the tears on the cheeks of the young men, but the notion of tears with no one there to dry them. Tears which are carving a place in the face, which are leaving scars. In other words, as if the tears were acid and eating away, corroding the faces, the beautiful faces of the young. It is those tears which move Jerusalem by in a kind of empathic sharing to weep as well. Interesting that these tears are the tears that do what they do because there is no one there to respond to them. There's no one there to comfort them and wipe them away. And so Yerushalayim herself, in a sense, becomes the one whose empathic response to these tears, even though she can't wipe them away. Nevertheless, she sheds her own tears to let them know that it's not nothing. Pasuk continues, Ein lo menachem mikol avel. There is no one to comfort her from all those who loved her. Rabbi Levi kol mokom shenemar ein. Anytime the expression is formulated this way, Ein lo menachem havola, it means that eventually she will have, that the comforter will come. As we see, Vatihi Sarai Akara ve'ein lo vlad, the use of ein lo. Sarah was barren and she had no child. V'havola, eventually she had. Shenemar v'Hashem pakad esoro. God remembered her. Udikavosei ulachano ein yilodim. Ein again, the ein, and Chana had no offspring. V'havola, and eventually she did. Shenemar ki pakad Hashem eschano. Udikavosei Tzion hi doresh ein lo. There is no one who is seeking the welfare of Jerusalem. V'havola, but eventually she would have. Shene'emar uvolet Tzion goel, and the Redeemer shall come to Zion. Af kan at omer ein lo menachem. Here too, even though we say that there is no one to comfort Yerushalayim, v'havola shene'emar anochi anochi hu menachem. From already a preview of the Shiva de Nechemta, the prophetic messages of comfort. God says, even when it appears that nowhere in the world is there anyone to comfort Yerushalayim, Anochi, Anochi, I God, will be your comforter. Kol re'eho bogdu ba, hayulo lo evim. Her friends, those who loved her, rebelled against her and became her enemies. Omer Reb Yaakov Tikvar Chanan, Zeh Michael v'Gabriel. These are the angels, Michael and Gabriel. Here there is This is all the Midrash says, but there is a long and extraordinary backstory. The Midrash says that God came to Michael and Gabriel and said, who do you love most? And they said, we love the Jewish people. And they said, and after that, what do you love most? And they said, the Beis HaMikdash. And the Rebbeinu Shalom handed them the fire and commanded them to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Because Hoyu lo la'oivim does not mean they became our enemies. It means they were the ones who had to make the terrible decision, like the decision to amputate, that the Beis HaMikdash must be sacrificed for what we love most. And in the Midrash, which will come up a little bit later, even in the Midrash Eicha, there is an extraordinary picture. It says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the coals to Gabriel to burn the Beis HaMikdash, and that the Malach, who we see portrayed here in a human form, the Malach held on to the coals for 6 months, praying that they would do tshuva, and that when he finally was forced, you can imagine, they were hot. The image is to give you this notion that he's holding burning embers, that when he finally throws them out of it's in frustration and in grief, that the tshuva that he has been delaying in the hopes of has not been forthcoming. And so what we see here is, even though we name Michael and Gabriel as friends who have turned to enemies, these are not friends who turn casually to enemies. And they are like enemies, but under their violent act, even against the Beis HaMikdash, the ultimate interest, the survival of Klal Yisrael, which is the whole theory of thanking God for spilling His anger on Eitz Va'evet, on wood and stone, that they are the instruments of this mercy writ large.
Rabbi, according to that theory, then why did people have to get killed as part of this process? Why not just burn the building and,
Generally speaking, Jerry, it's very hard for moderns to understand that when we think about human destruction in classical rabbinic literature, we're talking about the destruction of the entire people. The individual tragedies are not on the level of the extermination of Klal Yisrael. So the individual tragedies are, in a certain sense, more collateral losses. And it sounds hard-hearted to say that. Even so, the tradition carefully preserves all of the individual human tragedies. If nothing else, as the expression that Henry James uses, neural channels, ways for us to comprehend the Churban, and for it to become real to us. So even though we have traditions like the loss of a single individual is the loss of the whole world, we're talking in national terms. The Churban Beis HaMikdash is essentially the severing of the line of communication between man and earth. The whole human enterprise is downgraded by that. And so that's not quite the same as, the individual tragedies are grave, but not quite on the same level. The Midrash continues, Golso Yehuda. Judea was exiled. Frag the Midrash. Almost all of Menam Golim. So you think exile was a common feature of the ancient world. You meet a lot of people on the road, right? Everybody was always being exiled from here to there, from there to here.
Ask the Indians and the Muslims.
Ask the Indians and the Muslims, quite so. However, the Midrash rephrases, Elo af al pisha golim ein golusam golus. That their when they are exiled, it is incomparable to exile as it falls, as it is manifest on the Jewish people. And the Midrash will elaborate. Ummos ha'olam sha'ochlim bipitam v'shosim biyenom ein galusam galus. When the nations of the world are exiled, they never find themselves unable to find anything to eat. I just can't imagine what it is to be a goy. The idea that your plane can be forced down in a rural airport in Togo, and you get off the plane, you got a couple bucks, and then you go for lunch. The Jew is wondering if there are any kosher meals left on the plane. Pretzels, anything, give us pretzels. Because our golus implies the collapse of basic things that we take for granted in eating. Umos ha'olam she'en mehalchim be'es kaftios shelahem en golusam golus. It says that the nations of the world, they go to a foreign country and they can immediately adopt the clothing habits of that country, their uniform. That's no golus. Avol Yisrael shehem mehalchim yechefim golusam golus. When we go barefoot. What does that mean? It means that we have to remain Jews. We can't find ourselves easily eliding with the daily lifestyle of the population. In other words, we carry, as it were, Eretz Yisrael with us when we go into Golus. That we don't stop being B'nai Yisrael, and as such, it is much more painful. Lakach ne'amar Golsa Yehuda, Kanu Omer Golsa Yehuda, Lahalan hu Omer Vayigel Yehuda Me'al Admoso. In one point, the noun Yehuda, in one instance, the noun Yehuda is treated with the feminine verb, and in the other is treated with the masculine verb. Alakivan Shegolu, when they were exiled, Toshash Kochon Kinekeva. They became relatively weak as a female. Lakach Nemar Golso Yehuda. Then he goes on and he says, Me'oni. What do we mean, Me'oni, from poverty? Al-Shah. So one interpretation is, Al-Shah Ochlu Chometz B'Pesach Kemadin Dat. Omar Lo Sochal Olav Chometz Shivas Yomim Tochal Olav Matzos Lechem Oni. So Me'oni is an allusion to fidelity to the laws of Pesach, Chometz B'Pesach, and so it says that was somehow connected to the Churban, and of course the twinning that we've noticed before the first day of Pesach and Tisha B'Av, the B'Tseisi Mitzrayim, B'Tseisi Yerushalayim, the 2 days which are days of questions, the twinning of these two occasions, very reasonable to say that if they failed with Pesach, if they failed with the prohibition of Chometz, the reaction was they end up on that other day of insoluble kashas. Davar acher me'oni al shechovlu mishkan oni besoch botehem. They took the collateral of a poor man. You weren't allowed to take certain things away from a poor person and hold it overnight as collateral for a loan. You had to return it to him, so his bedding, for example. Kama da'amar im ish anihu lo sishkav ba'avuto. You may not bed down with his coverlet or whatever it is. Davar acher me'oni al she'oshku schar sochir. This is the oppression of a worker whom you are required to pay each day. Kamadat Omar lo sashok schar oni the evion. So you notice anytime the word oni is used, me'oni is connected to it in the pasuk. Davar acher me'oni al shegozlu matnos oni. These are the gifts which were supposed to be left over for the poor. Kemadat Omar La'oni V'Lager Tazov Osam, right? The gifts in the field. So people they took for themselves the share of the poor, and that is somehow triggered the korban. That the tithe taken in the 3rd and the 6th year, which was supposed to be given to the poor, they ate it themselves. That indeed one who eats grain from which the poor tithe has not been taken is chayav misa. Davar achar me'oni al she'ovdu avodas kochavim, the having worshipped idols, kamadat omar kol anos anochi shomea. This is when Yoshua and Moshe are responding to the sounds emanating from the bottom of the mountain when the Jews are worshiping the golden calf. Right? That is the avodah zarah that he refers to here. Omar Rav Achal kol kilus avodas kochavim anochi shomea. I hear the sound of the exaltation around idolatry, and because of that, Rabbi Yehuda b'Shem Rav Yossi Omer, quoting another very important source in the Midrash, was from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Ein lecho dor vador she'ein notel mechet'o shel egel. That the sin of the egel, as we mentioned before, the sin of the meraglim, the bechia ledoros, there is another one, the sin of the golden calf. There is no generation which is not connected to that, and this midrash is even more specific because it works on the pasuk kol anos anochi shomea, telling us that the kol anos is related to the me'oni in the pasuk in Eicha, that even here in the Churban Beis Hamikdash, the infidelity of the Jews at Har Sinai is still being remembered and exacted as their punishment. We'll stop here for this year. Next year, maybe.